Imagine the ground beneath your feet suddenly turns into liquid. It is 2:46 in the afternoon on March 11th, 2011. The world is screaming. Metal groans, glass shatters, and the roar of the earth drowns out your own thoughts. In our reality, this was the moment the Great East Japan earthquake unleashed a 9.0 magnitude nightmare, sending a wall of black water 40 meters high crashing into the coast, claiming nearly 20,000 lives and triggering a nuclear meltdown that terrified the globe. It was a tragedy defined by nature's fury and human resilience. But what if history took a darker, quieter turn? What if the warning systems failed you? Welcome to Midnight What-Ifs, where we peel back the skin of reality to see the rot underneath. Today, we are not just watching history, you are living it. Picture this. The shaking stops, and the air goes dead silent. The tsunami sirens that are supposed to wail for hours, they glitch, they stutter and die after just a few seconds, leaving only an eerie calm over your quiet suburb in Sendai. You stand in the doorway of your childhood home, your heart hammering against your ribs. Upstairs, your mother is bedridden, fragile, dependent on machines that need stability. The evacuation order came through on the radio, but it felt distant, optional. In this timeline, you make the choice that changes everything. You lock the front door. You choose to stay. You tell yourself it is just a quake, that the massive seawalls will hold, that moving her is simply too dangerous. But as you sit by her bedside, holding her frail hand, while the aftershocks rattle the windows, you do not realize that the ocean is not the only thing rising. By ignoring that order, you haven't just trapped yourself in a flood zone, you have volunteered for a descent into a hell where the water is the least of your worries. The neighbors you trust, the streets you know, they are about to change in ways you cannot imagine. As the sun begins to set and the first cold waves lap against your foundation, ask yourself, what is the price of one life when the civilized world washes away? The water is rising, and the real horror is just waking up. You are still gripping the doorframe, knuckles white, breath hitching in your throat like a trapped bird. The violent shaking that just tried to tear your world apart has subsided into a vibrating hum, leaving the air thick with dust and the scent of old plaster. In the living room of your modest home on the outskirts of Sendai, photographs lie shattered on the floor, smiling faces from happier years now covered in jagged glass. You are 34 years old, a mid-level manager who usually worries about spreadsheets and train schedules, but right now, your entire universe has shrunk to the frail, trembling woman in the back bedroom. You rush to her side. Your mother is gripping her blankets, eyes wide with a terror that seems to transcend the physical shaking of the earth. "It stopped," she whispers, her voice thin and reedy. You nod, forcing a smile you don't feel, smoothing her hair. "It's over, Ma. The house held. We're okay." For a moment, a wave of relief washes over you, a fragile, intoxicating up. The roof didn't collapse. The walls are still standing. You tell yourself that ignoring that evacuation order was the rational choice. How could you have dragged her out into the cold, onto roads likely buckled and broken, into the chaos of a shelter she wouldn't survive? You made the compassionate choice. You protected her sanctuary. The silence in the house feels like safety. You check the kitchen. A few plates are broken, but the pantry is intact. You feel a surge of competence. You can handle this. You have weathered storms before. But then, the silence changes texture. It stops being peaceful and starts feeling predatory. You move to the window, peering through the slats of the blinds. The street outside is eerily empty, save for a few abandoned cars with doors left wide open, like gaping mouths. The sirens that had been wailing earlier, the ones that usually scream for hours during drills, have choked off into a static hiss. That's the first down, a sharp plunge in your gut. Why did they stop? In the distance, towards the coast, there is a low, thrumming roar. It sounds like a freight train that never arrives. You fiddle with the battery-powered radio on the counter, desperate for a human voice, for an authority to tell you the worst is over. Static, garbled shouting. Words like breach and major drift through the white noise before the signal dies completely. A cold seed of doubt takes root in your stomach. Suddenly, a heavy thud against your front door makes you jump, your heart hammering against your ribs. You creep down the hallway, peering through the peephole. It's Mr. Tanaka from across the street. He's usually a gentleman who tends to his bonsai trees with meticulous care. Now his eyes are wild, darting left and right. He pounds on the wood again, not with a rhythm, but with the chaotic desperation of an animal. "Open up!" he screams, his voice cracking. "Do you have the generator? My radio says." He cuts himself off, looking back over his shoulder at the horizon. "Let me in. We need to pool supplies. They aren't coming for us." You hesitate. This is the moment the psychological rot begins. In any other timeline, you would open the door. You would help. But fear is a potent toxin. You look at his frantic hands, the sweat slicking his forehead despite the March chill. If you let him in, he sees your mother. He sees your limited food. He brings his panic into your controlled environment. You stay silent, holding your breath, effectively becoming a ghost in your own home. Tanaka curses, kicking your door once before sprinting away down the street, disappearing into the gray haze. The guilt hits you instantly, a heavy, suffocating down. You just turned your back on a neighbor. You are already changing, aren't you? The disaster hasn't even fully arrived, and you are already hoarding your humanity. You try to shake it off. You need to focus. You remember the emergency stash you hid in the crawl space last year, a box of canned peaches, bottled water, and a flashlight. You scramble to retrieve it, and the sight of those cans brings another brief spike of hope. You have calories. You have hydration. You can wait this out. You return to your mother's room, showing her the water like a trophy. "See?" you say, voice trembling slightly. "We have plenty. We just sit tight until the road's clear." She smiles weakly, but then her breath hitches. The nebulizer beside her bed gives a sputtering cough and dies. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen cuts out. The ambient light from the street lamps outside vanishes. Total darkness. The power grid has failed. The down hits you harder this time, a physical blow. Without power, the heating assumes a memory. The house begins to cool rapidly. Your mother's breathing grows jagged, the sound of fluid in her lungs amplifying in the dead silence. You realize with dawning horror that your sanctuary is becoming a tomb. You didn't just choose to stay. You chose to isolate yourself from the only systems that could keep her alive. And then, you hear it. Not the roar of the ocean, but something closer. A wet, slurping sound. You walk back to the living room, your flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. You shine it at the front door, the same door you barred against Mr. Tanaka. Dark liquid is seeping underneath the jam. It's not rain. It's moving too fast, bubbling up like black oil. It smells of brine, churned earth, and something metallic. Blood? The ocean isn't coming. It is here. You back away, the water touching your socks, soaking instantly into the fabric. Cold. Freezing cold. It's rising faster than it should. You look toward the window, and your flashlight beam catches movement outside. Not the water, but shapes. Silhouettes wading through the rising tide, moving toward your house. Are they neighbors coming to help? Or are they the ones who didn't evacuate? The ones who realized, too late, that civilization ended when the lights went out. The water laps at your ankles, a freezing shackle binding you to your choice, while outside, a shadow presses a hand against the glass, and you realize the hand holds something heavy, jagged, and terrifyingly deliberate. The shadows at your window resolve into faces, pale, rain-streaked, and terrified. It isn't a supernatural invasion. It's your neighbors, the Yamadas and the Satos, wading through the rising muck. For a split second, relief floods your chest. A desperate up that nearly brings you to your knees. You aren't the last person on Earth. You throw the latch, shoving the heavy door open against the resistance of the water. They stumble inside, shivering, bringing the smell of the ocean and ruined sewage with them. For a brief, shining moment, the terror of isolation recedes. There are voices, shared confusion, the comfort of human heat in a freezing room. You are not alone, but the relief is a liar. As you look past them into the street, the down hits you with the force of a physical blow. The water isn't stopping. In this twisted timeline, the tsunami didn't arrive as a single crashing wall that receded quickly. It is a slow, relentless siege. Your cul-de-sac has become a stagnant lagoon, a labyrinth of debris-filled canals where the black water swallows the world inch by inch. You decide to venture out with Mr. Yamada to assess the perimeter, hoping against hope for a dry road. Stepping off your porch is like stepping into a nightmare. The water is knee-deep now, thick and oily, swirling with the flotsam of wrecked lives. You push through it, the cold seeping through your jeans and biting into your skin like hundreds of tiny needles. You pass a floating child's backpack, bobbing silently next to a twisted bicycle. It's a graveyard of objects, silent accusations of the normalcy that was ripped away just hours ago. Every step is a battle against the impersonal force of nature. You reach the main intersection, the one that leads to the highway and safety. It's gone. A massive tangle of uprooted pine trees and crushed sedans has formed a dam, blocking the exit completely. The realization settles in your gut like lead. You are trapped. The water has turned your neighborhood into an island, and the ocean is the warden. Trudging back, you try to cling to a fragile hope. At the center of the cul-de-sac, where the ground is highest, a few more survivors have gathered. Flashlights cut through the gloom, their beams intersecting in the mist. There's a sense of solidarity here, a makeshift community forming in the dark. People are sharing bottles of tea, checking on each other's cuts. Someone cracks a joke about the property value going down, and a ripple of nervous laughter breaks the tension. It feels like you can survive this. It feels human. But then, you return to your house, and the reality of your choice crashes down on you. Your mother is awake. Her breathing is wet and ragged, the sound of a drowning occurring on dry land. She looks at you, eyes glassy in the beam of your flashlight. "Did you find a way out?" she whispers. Her trust in you is absolute, and it flays you alive. You lie. You tell her the roads are just blocked for now that help is coming. But as you feed her a spoonful of cold peaches, the guilt gnaws at your sanity. You kept her here. You traded her chance at a hospital bed for a slow death in a dark room. The psychological terror isn't just the water. It's the voice in your head screaming that you are the architect of this misery. You step back onto the porch to catch your breath, needing to escape the sound of her laboring lungs. That's when you see him. Takeda, the ex-cop who lives 3 houses down. He stands apart from the huddled group, a silhouette of rigid discipline in a chaotic world. He holds a clipboard. Where did he even find a clipboard? And is methodically clicking a pen, shining his light into people's open garages, noting things down. At first it feels reassuring. Another up. Someone with training is taking charge. Someone has a plan. You walk over to him, eager for leadership. "Officer Takeda," you say. "What's the move? How do we signal for rescue?" He doesn't look up immediately. He finishes writing a line, then turns his flashlight on you. The beam is blinding, interrogating. "Rescue isn't coming tonight, kid. Maybe not tomorrow. We need to inventory. Food, fuel, medicine." He walks with you back toward your house, and the down begins to spiral. His tone isn't helpful. It's predatory. He asks about your supplies, his eyes scanning your living room, lingering on the pantry, then on the dark hallway where your mother lies coughing. He's not calculating survival for everyone. He's calculating the return on investment for resources. "She's bad off?" he asks, gesturing with his chin toward the bedroom. It's not a question of sympathy. It's an assessment of liability. "She needs her meds," you say defensively. "She just needs power for the nebulizer." Takeda makes a noise in his throat, a dismissive grunt that chills you more than the floodwater. He looks back at the group of neighbors, then leans in close to you. The smell of stale tobacco and rain radiates off him. "Listen," he says, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper that barely rises above the lap of the water. "We have 20 people, maybe 3 days of food if we stretch it. The water is still rising." He pauses, letting the silence stretch until it snaps. "We're going to have to make hard choices about who gets what. We can't save everyone, especially the ones who are already half gone. The words hang in the air. A brutal, pragmatic sentence passed on the person you stayed behind to save. The darkness around you suddenly feels crowded with eyes. You realize with a sick, sinking dread that the floodwaters didn't just wash away the roads, they washed away the rules. And as Takeda taps his pen against the clipboard, staring at you with cold, dead eyes, you know the real danger isn't the tsunami anymore. It's the man standing right in front of you. You don't say yes to Takeda immediately, but silence, in this new world, is just a quiet form of agreement. Under the slate-gray sky of the following morning, the neighborhood watch has metastasized into something harder, colder. Takeda calls it the Resource Guardians, a name that sounds noble until you realize what it actually means. You are not guarding the people, you are guarding the calories. To prove your worth, and by extension to buy another day of safety for your bedridden mother, you accept your first assignment. Inventory. Wading into the flooded home of the Yamamotos, a family you haven't seen since the quake. Feels like desecration. The water inside is waist-deep, a slurry of silt and floating heirlooms. You push aside a sodden wedding album to reach the kitchen cabinets, your flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. The air smells of wet drywall and rotting food, a cloying scent that sticks to the back of your throat. You are a scavenger now, picking through the bones of your own community. Then, a moment of pure, blinding luck strikes. An up that makes your heart race. In a bathroom cabinet high enough to stay dry, you find a pristine bottle of prescription painkillers. Your hands tremble as you clutch the plastic bottle. This is currency. This is mercy. For the last 12 hours, your mother's groans have been a serrated knife against your nerves. This will buy her sleep. It will buy you silence. You pocket the pills, a rare sensation of control blooming in your chest. For a second, you think, I can do this. I can navigate this. But the descent back into the down is swift and brutal. As you wade back to your house, the water feels different. It hasn't receded. It sits heavy and stagnant, trapping the cul-de-sac in a toxic embrace. You scratch at your forearm, then your neck. Is it just the filth? Or is it the whispers you heard on Takeda's crackling emergency radio? Reports of the Fukushima plant venting radioactive steam are drifting in like ghosts. You look at the red rash forming on your skin and wonder if the rain falling on your face is poison. The existential dread isn't just about drowning anymore. It's about an invisible fire cooking you from the inside out. You rush inside to administer the pills. Your mother swallows them greedily, but the relief you expected doesn't come. Instead, the fever takes her. She looks at you with eyes that don't recognize her own child. "Why did you leave me?" she hisses, her voice jagged. "You left me in the dark. You always wanted to leave." The accusation hits you harder than the earthquake. You sacrificed everything, your safety, your future, to stay with her, and her delirium twists it into abandonment. You sit in the corner, knees pulled to your chest, as she mutters to people who aren't there. The psychological torment is exquisite. You are her savior, and in her mind, you are her jailer. A shout from outside breaks the spiral. Takeda is gathering the guardians. They've found something. 2 houses down, a man named Ito, a quiet, nervous accountant, has been holding out. The group discovered 50 gallons of bottled water hidden in his garage loft. The confrontation that follows destroys any illusion that you are the good guys. Ito stands in his driveway, weeping, begging to keep just a little for his cats. Takeda doesn't shout. He just steps forward, the water swirling around his boots, and calmly explains that animals are not viability priorities. The group descends on the stockpile like locusts. You watch, paralyzed, as your neighbors strip Ito of his survival. You take 2 bottles for yourself. You tell yourself you had to. But the water in your hands feels heavy with sin. Later, Takeda calls a meeting by the light of a single kerosene lantern. He opens that black ledger again. You lean in, squinting at the pages, and the blood drains from your face. It's not just an inventory of cans and batteries. Next to every name in the cul-de-sac, there is a number, a viability score. You see your name, 710. Useful. Young. You see your mother's name, 210. Expenditure heavy. And then you see the name of the Suzuki boy, a 7-year-old with a broken leg from the quake. Score, 410. We need to ration, Takeda says, his voice flat. Full rations for active gatherers, half rations for dependents. The implication is clear. The boy, your mother. They are dead weight. A mother in the group protests, but Takeda's logic is a cold, mathematical wall. If we feed everyone equally, he says, we all starve by Friday. The vote is called. You look at Takeda, then at the darkness where your mother sleeps. You raise your hand in favor of the rationing. You vote to starve a child to save your mother's medicine supply. The down is absolute. You have just sold a piece of your soul for a bottle of pills. The meeting disperses in a heavy, guilty silence. Night has fully fallen, turning the flooded streets into a black void. You turn to go back inside, the shame burning hot in your gut, when a piercing scream tears through the air. It comes from the edge of the water, near the barricade. The group freezes. Flashlights swing wildly toward the sound. There is a splash, a struggle, and then nothing. Just the ripples spreading out in the dark. Who was that? Takeda barks. Roll call. One by one, names are shouted, but one voice is missing. The Suzuki boy, the one whose rations you just voted to cut. Takeda turns his light on you. The beam is accusing, blinding. You were the last one near his house during inventory, he says, and the suspicion in his voice spreads to the others instantly. Did you see him? Or did you just decide to balance the ledger yourself? As the accusations fly and the shadows of your neighbors lengthen into monsters, you realize the horror has shifted. It's not the water, it's not the radiation, it's the fact that in a world without laws, the truth matters less than the fear. And right now, the fear is pointing at you. Takeda's flashlight beam remains fixed on your face, a blinding interrogation in the suffocating darkness. The accusation hangs in the humid air like smoke. I didn't touch him, you stammer, the words tasting like ash. I voted to cut his rations, I didn't kill him. The distinction feels sickeningly thin, but it's the only lifeline you have. Takeda lowers the light, but his eyes remain hard, glittering with a suspicion that has curdled into paranoia. Then help us find him, he commands. You join the search party, wading into the ink-black water that has turned your neighborhood streets into a labyrinth of despair. The down is immediate and visceral. The floodwaters, now waist-high and stagnant, hide treacherous debris that snags your ankles like grasping hands. In the distance, the skeletal remains of telephone poles jut out of the murk, silhouetted against a moonless sky. This isn't just a flood anymore. It's a prison designed by nature, and you are trapped in the cell block with the people you've betrayed. 20 minutes later, a shout from Mr. Yamada pierces the silence. You converge on a tangle of driftwood near the submerged park entrance. There, face down in the mire, is the Suzuki boy. He isn't moving. The silence that follows is heavier than the water. When Takeda turns the small body over, a collective gasp ripples through the group. Clutched in the boy's rigor-stiffened hand is a silver foil packet, a high-calorie emergency ration. Stolen. He was a thief, Takeda spits, his voice devoid of mourning. He took what wasn't his and paid the price. But then, a flicker of salvation. A brief, desperate, up. You lean in closer, your heart hammering. Wait, you point, your finger trembling. That's a Type C ration. The military kind. We don't have those in the inventory. Mrs. Sato, the kindly neighbor who usually avoids conflict, steps forward. He's right, she whispers. We only have civilian canned goods. He didn't steal from us. The tension snaps, releasing you from the immediate guillotine of blame. For a moment, you are not the villain. You exchange a look with Mrs. Sato, a silent pact of relief. You are safe. But the relief is narcotic, lulling you into a false sense of security before the reality of the situation drags you back down. If he didn't steal it from the group, where did he get it? And why is he dead? You retreat to your house, needing to escape the sight of the boy being wrapped in a tarp. But your sanctuary has become a torture chamber. Your mother is awake, her eyes darting frantically around the dark room. The lack of electricity means the air is stale and hot. She grips your arm with surprising strength, her nails digging in. "The water is under the bed," she moans, hallucinating in the fevered grip of infection. "I can hear it breathing. You brought the ocean inside, didn't you?" Her accusations, born of delirium, mirror your own guilt so perfectly, it feels like telepathy. You did bring this on her. You ignored the order. You chose this slow, wet death over the uncertainty of evacuation. You feed her the last of the water you took from the hoarder, but it feels like pouring sand down a dry well. The psychological terror deepens. You are fighting a war on two fronts, against the flood outside and the madness inside. The next morning brings a new, chilling evolution in the group's pathology. Takeda summons everyone to the command center. His garage, now fortified with sandbags. He looks more haggard, his eyes sunken. He starts talking about leaks and parasites. He mentions a famine he survived as a child, a story about eating boiled leather to survive. It's a glimpse into the trauma driving his ruthlessness, transforming him from a neighbor into a tyrant. He isn't protecting the group, he is projecting his past fears onto the present. "We need trials," he announces calmly, "to root out the rot." As if to punctuate his paranoia, he leads you to the supply pile. Several large canisters of water have been punctured, their contents drained into the filth on the floor. Sabotage. The down slams into you. It wasn't an accident. Someone among you is actively trying to destroy the group from within. The suspicion returns, sharper this time. Neighbors eye each other not as friends, but as suspects. Was it the quiet accountant? The grieving mother? Or you, the one with the sick parent draining resources? Suddenly, the static-filled radio in the corner bursts to life. A voice, clear, authoritative. "Rescue operations commencing in Sector 4, holding pattern established." Hope flares like a magnesium strip, blinding and intense. An up so powerful it makes you dizzy. "Sector 4, someone cries. "That's us! They're coming!" People hug, tears streaming down dirt-streaked faces. You feel the knot in your chest loosen. You survived. You made it. Then the message loops. "Operations commencing, March 12th, 800 hours. The date. It's from 3 days ago. It's a ghost signal bouncing off the atmosphere, mocking you. The silence that follows is crushing. The hope evaporates, leaving a residue of despair that is blacker than the floodwaters. To make matters worse, a cracking sound echoes from the south. The makeshift bridge, the only dry route to the main road, collapses into the murky depths, severed by the relentless pressure of the water. You are completely cut off. Takeda turns to you, his face a mask of cold fury. The failed hope has snapped something in him. "The boy had a ration we didn't have," he says, his voice low. "And now our water is sabotaged. You were the only one who went outside the perimeter yesterday to check the bridge. Did you meet someone? Did you trade our safety?" The accusation isn't rational, but fear doesn't need logic. The neighbors, desperate and heartbroken, turn their eyes to you. The guardians are no longer guarding. They are hunting. As Takeda steps forward, demanding a vote on your expulsion, which is a death sentence, a low, rhythmic rumble begins to vibrate through the floorboards. It's not the earthquake. It's not the water. It's the sound of a mob finding its scapegoat. The rumble that ended the last chapter wasn't the earth moving. Not yet. It was the low, collective growl of your neighbors, a sound far more terrifying than any tsunami. You stand in the center of Takeda's garage, the de facto council chamber of your waterlogged microcosm. The air is thick with the smell of kerosene and unwashed bodies, lit by the sputtering yellow glow of a single lantern. Takeda sits behind a folding table like a warlord in a polyester windbreaker, the viability ledger open before him. The accusations of theft and sabotage hang heavy in the humid air. This is the moment the timeline splits, and the weight of it crashes down on you. You have a choice. You could confess to a minor, unrelated lie, admitting you hoarded an extra bottle of water earlier, to feed their hunger for a scapegoat and deflect the darker charges. Or you can stand your ground, pull the empty ration wrapper from your pocket that you found near the body, and use logic to dissect their paranoia. You choose to fight. "Look at the lot number," you shout, slamming the silver foil onto the table. The sound echoes sharply against the corrugated metal walls. It ends in 04. Our inventory ends in 09. I didn't steal from the group because this didn't come from the group. The boy found it outside. Maybe from a washed-up container. Maybe from a rescue drop we missed. The silence that follows is agonizing. Takeda picks up the wrapper, his eyes narrowing as he scrutinizes the numbers. The down of the accusation holds you in its grip, squeezing the air from your lungs. Then, Mrs. Sato, the quiet woman who backed you before, steps out of the shadows. "He's right," she says, her voice trembling but firm. "I saw him checking the bridge. He was looking for a way out for all of us, not stealing." Takeda grunts, tossing the wrapper back. "Fine," he mutters. "Cleared. For now." A wave of relief washes over you. A fragile up. The tension in the room breaks. Someone hands you a tin of cold mackerel. It's a meager offering, but as you eat it, sitting on a stack of damp tires next to Mrs. Sato, it tastes like triumph. You have an ally. You have cleared your name. For 10 minutes, as the rain patters rhythmically against the metal roof, you allow yourself to believe that humanity hasn't completely drowned. But the down is always waiting, patient and cruel. As the meal ends, the atmosphere shifts again. The rain outside intensifies, sounding like thousands of fingernails scratching at the siding. One of the younger men scratches violently at his neck, red welts rising on his skin. "It's the plant," he whispers, eyes wide. The wind shifted. It's the radiation. The rumor spreads like a virus through the garage, an invisible, creeping horror that you can't fight or barricade against. You feel a phantom itch on your own arm. Is it real? Or is it just the stress manifesting as poison? Takeda gestures for you to approach the table again. Others are distracted by the radiation talk. He opens the ledger to a new page. The header reads, "Compassionate Release." "Your mother," he says softly, almost gently. "I heard her screaming last night. The pain, it's not right to keep her like that." He taps his pen against a column of names. Some are crossed out. We need to think about the quality of life, about mercy. The blood drains from your face. He's not talking about medicine. He's talking about euthanasia. He's talking about murdering your mother to save resources, wrapped in the guise of mercy. The psychological horror twists deep into your gut. You remember the moment you ignored the evacuation order, the conviction that you were saving her. Now that very choice has brought her to the attention of a man who views life as a math problem. You look at his hands, calloused, capable, and realize he has probably already done this. "Don't touch her," you whisper, the threat sounding weak even to your own ears. "It's not a threat, friend," Takeda smiles, a sad, terrifying expression. "It's a viability calculation." Suddenly the floor lurches. It's not a rumble this time. It's a violent jolt. An aftershock. The lantern swings wildly, casting chaotic shadows that dance like demons. The garage groans, the metal screaming under the stress. A structural beam, weakened by days of water damage, snaps with the sound of a gunshot. "Move!" Takeda roars. The north wall collapses inward. Debris and mud explode into the room. You are thrown to the ground, choking on dust. Screams erupt. In the chaos, you see Mrs. Sato pinned under a shelf, her face twisted in pain. To your left, Takeda is struggling to free his leg from a pile of sandbags. You have a split second, a what-if moment of pure instinct. You scramble toward Mrs. Sato, heaving the shelf off her. She gasps, clutching your arm. You drag her back toward the center of the room just as the roof sags further. You look back at Takeda. He's free now, dusting himself off, his ledger clutched tight to his chest. He sees that you saved her. He sees that you didn't help him. The dust settles. The garage is half ruined, exposing the group to the driving rain. The mood is apocalyptic. You are wet, bruised, and terrified. But then, from the wreckage of the communications table, a sound cuts through the storm. Static. Crackle. Repeat. Any survivors in Sector Boat approaching from the north. The signal is faint, barely a whisper. Is it another loop? Or is it real? You look at Takeda. He hears it too. But the look in his eyes isn't relief. It's calculation. If rescue comes, his kingdom ends. If rescue comes, the ledger is evidence of crimes, not survival. As the static clears and a voice asks for coordinates, you realize the most terrifying truth of all. The rescue might be coming, but Takeda might not let anyone live long enough to reach it. The radio signal that cut through the storm wasn't a lifeline. It was a verdict. Takeda stands over the receiver, his face illuminated by the flickering green light of the display. The voice on the other end is clipped, military, and terrifyingly pragmatic. Extraction vector confirmed. ETA 48 hours, capacity limited. Priority given to able-bodied survivors and essential personnel only. Streamline your group. Streamline. The word hangs in the damp garage like a guillotine blade. It's a polite, bureaucratic way of saying, cull the weak. Because you defied Takeda in the last chapter, because you dared to prove your innocence and challenge his authority, he turns that cold, reptilian gaze on you. You heard them, he says, his voice devoid of any human warmth. We need to update the ledger. Go assess your mother. If she can't walk to the extraction point, she doesn't go on the list. Prove to me she's still viable. You stumble out of the garage, the rain masking the tears of rage stinging your eyes. The down is suffocating. You are being forced to act as the executioner for the person you sacrificed everything to save. Entering your mother's bedroom is like stepping into a tomb. The air is thick with the sickly sweet scent of unwashed sheets and something deeper, something rotting. You peel back the blankets to check her legs. The skin is translucent, mottled with dark bruises that haven't healed. The water from the flood has seeped into the mattress, bringing with it the filth of the outside world. She is burning up, muttering about her garden, about flowers that don't exist anymore. She isn't viable. If Takeda sees this, he won't just leave her. He might accelerate the process. You pull the blankets back up, your hands shaking. You have to lie. You have to invent a recovery that isn't happening. As you turn to leave, your foot kicks something hard in the debris pile near the window. A portable battery bank. You pick it up, wiping off the mud. The indicator lights blink. 2 bars left. A sudden piercing up shoots through your chest. You fumble for your phone, dead for days, and plug it in. The screen flickers to life. You rush to the corner of the room, shielding the glow. You dial your sister in Tokyo. 1 ring, 2. Hello? The voice is clear. It's her. Tears spill down your cheeks. Yumi, it's me. We're alive. We are unable to take your call right now. Please leave a message after the tone. The beep is the loudest sound in the world. It wasn't her. It was a recording. The hope shatters instantly, plunging you into a despair so profound it feels physical. The network is still down. The world hasn't heard you. You are screaming into a void, and the only thing answering is a machine. You slump against the wall, the silence of the room mocking you. But in the depths of that down, survival instinct kicks in. You wipe your face. You can't break now. You leave the room and head back toward the main house to scavenge for anything that might bribe Takeda. In the hallway, you spot something odd. A loose floorboard near the closet where Mr. Yamada has been sleeping. You pry it up. Inside, wrapped in a plastic bag, are 3 cans of tuna and a box of matches. Yamada's secret stash. The kindly old man who backed you up has been hoarding while the group starves. It's a betrayal, yes, but for you, it's a weapon, a bargaining chip. You replace the board, your heart racing. You have leverage. You return to the garage. The mood has shifted from anxious to predatory. The guardians are debating. You hear phrases like greater good and mercy thrown around with chilling casualness. Takeda is leading the discussion, his trauma laid bare. I held my daughter's hand in '95, he's saying, staring at the ledger. I waited too long. I won't let hesitation kill the rest of us. His pathology is clear. He isn't cruel because he enjoys it. He's cruel because he's terrified. He views weakness as a contagion. Well? Takeda looks up as you enter. Is she walking? She's improving. You lie, your voice steady. The fever broke. She can move with assistance. Takeda studies you for a long moment, looking for the tremor in your hands. We'll see, is all he says. He turns back to the ledger. We have 12 people. The boat takes 8. We need to make cuts tonight so we don't waste rations tomorrow. The atmosphere thickens with dread. The fog outside presses against the broken wall, isolating the group in a bubble of impending violence. Takeda picks up his pen. "Yamada," he says. "You're old, but you're fit. You stay." You glance at Yamada, knowing his secret. You could expose him. You could trade his spot for your mother's. The moral dilemma claws at your throat. But before you can speak, Takeda continues down the list. Sato, keep. Tanaka, keep. He pauses at the bottom of the page. He looks at you, a strange, unreadable expression on his face. And then there's the matter of the supplies. The missing inventory from yesterday. We never really settled that, did we? I proved I didn't take it, you say, the panic rising again. Mrs. Sato saw the wrapper. Mrs. Sato saw a wrapper, Takeda corrects softly. She didn't see you find it. He flips the page. And I've been thinking, someone who lies so easily about a candy bar might lie about other things, like a dying mother's condition. Your blood runs cold. He knows. Or he guesses. It doesn't matter. The ledger's pen hovers over a name. We need to ensure the strongest survive, Takeda whispers. And liars. Liars are a weakness we can't afford. He draws a thick black line through a name. You lean forward, expecting to see your mother's name crossed out. But it isn't hers. It's yours. The ink on Takeda's ledger is still wet, a black mark next to your name that screams expendable. You back out of the garage, the eyes of the group burning into you. But before the sentence can be carried out, a hand grabs your wrist in the shadows. It's Mrs. Sato, the ally you saved. The woman whose defense of you earlier felt like a lifeline. She pulls you behind the wreckage of a collapsed garden wall, her face pale and streaked with mud. "I'm sorry," she whispers, her voice cracking. "I told him about the discrepancies in the inventory. I planted the doubt." The betrayal hits you harder than the floodwater, a visceral down that knocks the wind out of you. "Why?" you hiss, pulling away. "I saved you." "Because I'm sick," she confesses, pulling up her sleeve to reveal a hidden, festering wound on her arm. "I need antibiotics he's hoarding. If he knew I was infected, I'd be off the list. I needed a distraction. I needed him to look at you, not me." The rage flares hot in your chest. You could drag her back to Takeda right now. You could expose her rot, watch him cross her name out, and reclaim your spot on the boat. It would be easy. It would be survival. But as you look at her terrified eyes, you realize that becoming Takeda is a fate worse than death. You make your choice. You swallow the anger. "We don't turn on each other," you say, your voice trembling. "We turn on him." The timeline shifts. Instead of a victim, you become a conspirator. The next morning brings a strange, eerie change to the landscape. The floodwaters have begun to recede, but there is no relief in it. As the water pulls back, it unveils the corpse of your neighborhood. The streets are coated in a thick, gray sludge that smells of sewage and decay. You wade through the knee-deep muck, the silence broken only by the settling of ruined houses. It's a graveyard of normalcy. Bicycles, family portraits, and worst of all, the unmarked mounds of debris that you know hide the bodies of those who didn't make it to the second floor. In this wasteland, you find a miracle. A up that feels like divine intervention. Behind the community center, you discover a sealed rainwater tank that remained above the flood line. You crack the seal. The water inside is clear. Clean. You fill a canteen and rush back to the small faction of outcasts you've rallied. Mrs. Sato, Mr. Yamada, and two others who fear Takeda's judgment. You pass the canteen around. They drink greedily, tears mixing with the water. For 10 minutes, huddled in the ruins, there is laughter. There is camaraderie. You have circumvented the tyrant's rationing. You have hope. But the down in this world is relentless, and it strikes with the precision of a sniper. Mr. Yamada pulls a small yellow device from his pocket, a Geiger counter he salvaged from a school science kit. He holds it to the canteen. The device begins to click. Slowly at first, then faster. A steady, rhythmic warning. Click, 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 click. The water isn't clean. The fallout from the meltdown has drifted north with the wind and rain, poisoning the very thing giving you life. The silence that falls over the group is absolute. You feel the water in your own stomach, heavy and cold. You have just poisoned the people you tried to save. The trust you built evaporates, replaced by a terrified realization. There is no safe harbor here. Back at the garage, the tension explodes. Takeda has found out about your secret meeting. He stands atop the sandbags, his face twisted in a manic grimace. He isn't just angry, he's breaking. The facade of the stoic ex-cop crumbles, revealing the terrified man underneath. "You think you can survive out there?" he screams, pointing at the radioactive mud. "I tried to keep order. I tried to do what had to be done. In '95, I walked away. I left them in the rubble because I was scared, and I swore I'd never be weak again." The confession hangs in the air. He didn't stay to lead. He stayed to punish himself. His cruelty isn't strength, it's penance. He is a man haunted by ghosts, creating new ones to silence the old. Suddenly, a sound cuts through his rant. A low thrumming that vibrates in your chest. Thwup, thwup, thwup. Heads snap toward the horizon. Through the gray mist, a shape emerges. A helicopter. It's real. It banks over the receded floodwaters, the roar of its rotors deafening. A flare of red smoke pops near the garage. The landing zone. This is it. The end of the nightmare. But as the helicopter descends, hovering just feet above the sludge, your heart sinks. It's a small Coast Guard rescue chopper. 4 seats, maybe 5. There are 12 of you. Takeda looks at the chopper, then at the group. He pulls a rusted revolver from his waistband, a weapon he's kept hidden until now. The madness in his eyes solidifies into a deadly resolve. He isn't planning to negotiate who gets on. He's planning to subtract until the math works. "The ledger is closed," he yells over the roar of the engine, leveling the gun at you. "Only the viable leave this hell." The roar of the helicopter drowns out the sound of Takeda's screaming, turning his threats into a silent, manic pantomime. The wind from the rotors whips the gray sludge of the floodwaters into a frenzy, stinging your eyes and coating your skin in a film of toxic grime. Takeda still has the revolver leveled at your chest, his finger whitening on the trigger. He is the gatekeeper of salvation, and you are on the wrong side of the gate. Then, the radio in his pocket crackles, amplified by the speaker he has clipped to his belt. "Visual on armed subject. Drop the weapon or we will not descend. Repeat, drop the weapon." Takeda hesitates. In that split second of indecision, the psychological dynamic of the group shatters. The fear of the gun is replaced by the desperate animal hunger for the ladder dangling above. Mr. Yamada lunges, not at Takeda, but at the ledger in his other hand. He rips it away, the pages fluttering into the mud. "It's fake!" Yamada screams, holding up a page where Takeda had clumsily forged viability scores for himself, giving him perfect marks despite his age. "He cooked the books. He was never saving us. He was saving himself." The distraction works. Takeda lowers the gun, stunned by the rebellion. From the belly of the hovering aircraft, a cargo net drops with a heavy thud onto the roof of the garage. It's not the ladder yet. It's supplies. A chaotic up surges through the group. You scramble toward the net, tearing it open with bleeding fingers. Inside, there are MREs, blankets, and miraculously, a red medical kit. You grab a syringe of broad-spectrum antibiotics and a bottle of sterile water. You rush to your mother, who is slumped against the sandbags, her breath rattling in her chest like dry leaves. You inject the medicine, uncapping the water and forcing it past her cracked lips. For a moment it feels like magic. Her eyes flutter open, clearing of the feverish haze. She squeezes your hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "You stayed," she whispers. "You didn't leave me." The relief is so potent it makes you dizzy. You have defied the odds. You have beaten the tyrant. You have saved her. But the down in this timeline is a predator that likes to play with its food. As the color returns to her cheeks, she begins to cough. It starts as a dry hack and evolves into a wet, violent spasm. She doubles over, and when she pulls her hand away from her mouth, it is covered in a black, viscous ichor. It's not just pneumonia. It's the infection from the water, the necrotic sickness that Takeda had whispered about, the one that turns the lungs into swamp water. Takeda sees it. He steps back, a look of vindicated horror on his face. "She's a carrier," he announces, his voice cutting through the wind. "Look at the blood! It's the black rot! If she gets on that chopper, she infects the crew. She infects the shelter. She kills everyone. The pilot's voice booms again. We are low on fuel, taking 4 passengers, 2 minutes. Send up the healthy. The moral horror descends on you like a physical weight. You have 4 spots. There are 10 of you left. And your mother, the person you destroyed your life to protect, is patient 0. The group looks at you. Mrs. Sato, the woman you forgave, looks at her own young niece, a quiet girl who has survived this week on half rations without complaint. My niece is clean, Mrs. Sato pleads, pushing the girl forward. Please, she has a future. You look at the girl, then you look at your mother. Takeda is right. If you send your mother up, you are smuggling a biological time bomb. If you stay, you both die in the mud. But then, a dark, chilling thought enters your mind. A pathology born of days in the dark. Who has to know? You have the medical kit. You can wipe her mouth. You can wrap her in the thermal blanket to hide the tremors. You can lie. She's fine, you shout at the pilot, waving the empty antibiotic wrapper. It was just dehydration. She's stabilized. Takeda steps forward to protest. To tell the truth, that would doom her. She's sick. Don't let her. You don't let him finish. You look at the group, at the people you've shared starvation with. He pulled a gun on us, you scream, channeling every ounce of your fear into manipulation. He tried to kill us to steal a seat. Are you going to listen to the man who wanted you dead? The mob mentality, fueled by your desperate lie, turns on Takeda. They shove him back, away from the ladder. He falls into the sludge, screaming about the infection, but no one listens. He is the villain of this story, and you are the hero, aren't you? You grab the rope ladder. You hoist your mother up, ignoring her pained whimpers. You push Mrs. Sato's niece aside, gently but firmly. There's no room, you mutter, not meeting the child's eyes. Only family. You climb. The wind buffets you, threatening to tear you from the rungs. Below you see the faces of Mrs. Sato, Mr. Yamada, and the girl, looking up with a mixture of betrayal and resignation. You see Takeda, struggling to his knees, laughing a manic, broken laugh as the water begins to rise again around his ankles. You haul yourself into the cabin, pulling your mother in after you. The door slides shut, muffling the roar of the world ending below. You wrap your arms around her, burying your face in her shoulder so you don't have to look at the pilot. You have won. You have survived. But as the chopper banks and lifts, leaving the doomed neighborhood behind in the gray twilight, your mother coughs again, softly, wetly, against your chest. You tighten your grip, not to comfort her, but to silence the sound. The true horror isn't the flood, or Takeda, or the radiation. It's the realization of what you just did. You traded the innocent for the infected. You traded the truth for a heartbeat. And as you look down at your hands, trembling in the cabin light, you wonder if you saved a life, or if you just stole a death. The roar of the helicopter blades fades into the sterile, rhythmic beeping of a quarantine monitor. You made it. You survived the flood, the hunger, and the tyranny of the Guardians. But as you stand on the other side of the isolation glass, watching your mother sleep in a plastic tent, the victory tastes like ash. She is alive, yes, but every time she breathes, you hear the silence of the girl you pushed aside to give her that seat. You hear the water rushing back over Takeda, over Mrs. Sato, over the ruins of a neighborhood that became a graveyard of human decency. In our real history, the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami was a tragedy of nature that claimed nearly 20,000 lives, a time when communities bonded in the face of devastation. But in this twisted timeline, your defiance created a different legacy. By ignoring the order, you didn't just trap yourself in a flood, you stepped into a world where survival meant becoming the monster you feared. The resource guardians didn't disappear when the waters receded. In this alternate Japan, those flooded exclusion zones became breeding grounds for a new, cold pathology, where neighbors are weighed on scales of viability and the weak are just numbers to be erased. You exposed Takeda's lies, sure. You broke his micro-tyranny. But looking at your own reflection in the glass, you have to ask, Did you save her life only to lose your soul? The ledger may be gone, but the names you crossed out are etched into your memory forever. So, I have to ask, what if you had been there? What if the siren wailed and the choice was yours? Would you have abandoned your family to follow the rules, or would you have burned the world down to keep them warm? Drop your answer in the comments below. I want to see how dark your survival instinct really is. If this alternate nightmare kept you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button and subscribe to Midnight What Ifs for more historical horrors that put you in the center of the story. Share this with a friend who thinks they'd survive the apocalypse, and turn on notifications so you never miss a timeline branch. Until next time, sleep with one eye open, and remember, one choice can flood your world with dread. Sweet dreams, or not.